what makes Elian Peña one of the most exciting international free agent signings in Mets history.
Elian Peña is a special young man. We are very excited to welcome into the organization. This is a splash talent. It is the definition of a five-tool player. He can hit, he has power, he can run, he can throw, he can field at shortstop. He has cool confidence running the bases, but his calling card is his ability to control the strike zone. Nobody can control the strike zone like Elian Peña controls the strike zone. There's an intimidation factor with him in the box facing pitchers. He doesn't chase, he doesn't swing and miss. Just to add an anecdote here, when I was scouting him probably 3-4 years ago, I was pretty surprised by how many pitches he would take in batting practice. Like super selective, not something you typically see. And I asked him, I said, Elian, like, why do you do that? Why do you take so many pitches? And he kind of looked at me confused. And he said, why would I swing at a pitch that I can't hit hard?
Hey, thanks for meeting us at the Apple. I'm Vito Calisi. That's Jonathan Barron. And today we are talking to Rosario Chiavaro, the manager of international scouting for the New York Mets. International free agency was about 2 weeks ago at this point. And we wanted to just have a conversation with an expert on the subject here at the Mets. So why don't you give fans kind of a quick rundown of what international free agency is?
Yeah, for sure. First of all, thanks for having me, guys. Excited to be here and talk about some players. International free agency, the signing period opened for us for the 2025 class on January 15th, and it runs until December 15th of this year. It encompasses amateur players who have reached 16 years of age prior to the signing period, who reside outside the United States, Canada, and Puerto Rico, the players who are not subject to the amateur draft. Mainly that is players residing in Latin America, but it's also some players in the Pacific Rim and the Asian markets, a la Roki Sasaki. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Now, this class for the Mets was headlined by a guy who a lot of fans might have heard about so far, but we want to give you, as the expert, the opportunity to explain what makes Elian Peña one of the most exciting international free agent signings in Mets history, the huge name that he's been really for 4 or 5 years at this point.
Elian Peña is a special young man. We are very excited to welcome into the organization. This is a splash talent. It is the definition of a five-tool player. He can hit, he has power, he can run, he can throw, he can field at shortstop. He has cool confidence running the bases. But his calling card is his ability to control the strike zone. Nobody can control the strike zone like Elian Peña controls the strike zone. There's an intimidation factor with him in the box facing pitchers. He doesn't chase, he doesn't swing and miss. There's a selectiveness and a cerebralness to his plan of attack in the batting box. He just add an anecdote here. When I was scouting him probably 3-4 years ago, I was pretty surprised by how many pitches he would take in batting practice. Like super selective, not something you typically see. And I asked him, I said, Elian, like, why do you do that? Why do you take so many pitches? And he kind of looked at me confused. And he said, why would I swing at a pitch that I can't hit hard? I think it really hones in on how intelligent he is as a hitter and the plan that he has at the plate.
Yeah, I mean, look, that gets me excited as a Mets fan, as a guy who loves prospects. And it's a guy we don't have much information on in general outside of the organization. And all we've heard is these comps to Rafael Devers. Like, what do those kind of comps mean to somebody like you?
Yeah, I don't love the comps in general. I think it's a little unfair to put that on such a young player. The Devers comp, I understand, at least from the hitter's perspective. But where I take a bit of issue there is, Devers is obviously a third baseman, and I think Elian can really play shortstop. This is a plus athlete. He runs a 6.5 60 for us. And he has looked more and more at home as shortstop the more we've scouted him over the years. It's a plus arm. It's soft hands. He makes the routine play look easy. He makes the difficult play look easy as shortstop. I'm very comfortable with him playing that position. I think he will be a shortstop.
And obviously, shortstop is a position that's usually reserved for the best athlete on the field. And Elian is that guy, which is why we've heard his name for a few years here. Now, from the actual scouting perspective, when does it begin, especially with a talent like Elian? on the island, when you guys start hearing about these kids, number one, what age are they when you first get a look at them? What's the process like as they make their way to January 15th of their signing period? And how do you really identify with a player so young that, yeah, these tools, they're going to grow, he's going to grow, and this guy could be a major league ball player one day?
Yeah, for sure. So this process, as it does in all of these countries, it starts with our area scouts. These guys are getting the information and collecting at-bats on prospects as soon as they kind of come onto the scene. These kids are obviously in their early teenage years when they first start working out for teams, playing in tournaments, and that's when our scouting process starts with them. And so after our area scouts kind of begin that process, it advances into getting a cross-check look. Our cross-checkers then take over, get a look at the player, and then we, in our process, we work other departments into the scouting process. So we have analytics come in and collect data and kind of analyze that, contextualize it, given the rest of the class. Our performance tech team looks at them through a performance outlook. We get our mental skills coaches in and kind of talk to them from that standpoint. So it's multiple facets of the organization kind of touching these players and really involved in our scouting process, and helps us make the best informed decision possible.
And to that extent, with Elian, when is the last time you or your colleagues saw a prospect this young in the international free agent scene and really felt the excitement that we all feel about having Elian Peña in the Mets organization?
Yeah, I've been doing this this is going to be my 6th year now with the Mets. I certainly have not felt this way about a prospect, and I don't think I'm going to for quite some time. I think Elian's special, and I don't think it's. I don't think it's common that you're going to give 80% of your bonus to one player, and we felt very comfortable doing so, given the process that undertook to take him to get him into the organization. We had 25 scouts, both international and domestic, get eyes on Elian. We had multiple facets of the organization provide feedback and what they liked. That's player development, that's mental skills, performance department, et cetera. So I don't think that we're going to see a player of that caliber very often.
Yeah, I mean, look, you've told us so far about like his strength, his speed, his athleticism, but also you were saying before, like his level of baseball IQ, it seems, is at a really high level for somebody at this age, especially. How rare is it to see that, especially in guys at this young?
Yeah, it's very rare. I think one of our core scouting tenets is finding guys who can control the strike zone, and I think that's something that's evident in the rest of this class as well. It is in previous classes with all of our guys, but Elian just took it to a different level. Like I said earlier, there's an intimidation factor with him in the box. It's him versus the pitcher, and he wins that battle 9 times out of 10. It's just such an advanced knowledge of the strike zone, and oftentimes I think he's better than the umpires that are featured in these tournaments.
Hopefully better than the robot umpires coming as well.
Yeah. He probably is. But yeah, to answer your question, it's incredibly rare. It's not common, and there's a reason why he got the bonus that he did.
Let's talk about another shortstop that the Mets brought in with this international free agency class, and it's Roni García. Tell us what Met fans can expect from Roni.
Yeah, Roni made it easy for us. He just kept hitting every time we went and scouted him. It's a sweet swing from the left side. There's natural feel to hit. I think it's plus about the ball. And he's working kind of it's a plus skill set over splash tool set. He could really play the game. Like I said, every time we saw him in tournaments and private workouts, he just hit for us. There is... It's not a wow body type, but it's a plus baseball IQ and plus baseball skill set for sure.
All right, let's move to the outfield. Another player acquired this year, Aiberson Blanco. What stands out about him?
Yeah, Iverson's a fun player. He's an extra athletic Venezuelan center fielder. Boy, can he run 6'4", 6'5", 60-yard dash times from us and our scouts. could really throw. We're talking about a 6-7 arm from the outfield right now. I think both the run tool and the arm grade is really going to play for him and have an impact on the game. And this is a strong-bodied kid. There is, given the size, you wouldn't think it, but there's some raw power in there. I mean, he touches exit velos over 99 miles an hour right now. And I think as he has strength and adds some more size, this is going to be a pretty complete player.
See, what's so exciting for me, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong in how I'm perceiving this, the Mets are really building a great foundation up the middle. We talked about Elian, we talked about Roni, Aiberson Blanco, center fielder. You look at some of the guys at the upper parts of the system, a Jet Williams who could play short, second, center field. Luis Angel Acuna, who's played center field, short, second, could probably play third base as well. Behind the dish, Francisco Álvarez, who is still very, very young, entering his age 23 season. Giovanni Rodriguez, the headliner of last year's 2024 IFA class. So you tell me, is that a philosophy that the organization is taking, trying to build up the middle with the most athletic players on the field?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think anytime we're scouting players, our scouts are aware of this, that we're looking for guys who could stick up the middle. Obviously, catcher, shortstop, and center field are the main guys. Those are the premium positions. Those are the guys that we're scouting. We want athletic players who can stay at those positions and ultimately provide the most value they can for the organization.
So, as we said, international free agency was about 2 weeks ago. That's when these deals were starting to get signed. Now, what's the process look over the next few weeks as our major league spring training, minor league spring training starts? They go to the Dominican Republic for their own spring training, right?
Right, yeah. So the guys that we just brought into the organization, they will be in and out of the Dominican Academy up until the start of the Dominican Summer League season. And they'll be in a DSL spring training leading up to that in June.
And John and I, we follow the DSL Orange and DSL Blue pretty hard. It's a really interesting league because, like, every team, most teams have two teams within the league itself, right?
Correct.
And it's not, there's no video of it. Like, you just have to follow along box scores, but like, you really are seeing like the potential future of your organization when you're keeping up with these teams, right?
Yeah, I mean, every time we go down to scout the Dominican Republic, we always set aside days to, watch our DSL teams, to kind of, make sure that the players that we thought could play. I think it helps recalibrate us as scouts. I think it's a good chance for us to connect to player development and see how the players that we scouted are progressing, if the things that we projected that the players can do are happening. And, I think it just makes us better scouts the more information we can get from those departments.
And if those progressions are taking place as scheduled, these players will eventually come stateside. And that's a big challenge. And I think it's something that fans don't really pay attention to or appreciate the challenges that the young man who spent the first 16, 17 years of his life in a country, whether it be Venezuela, Dominican Republic, so on and so forth, are now coming to the United States and in many ways facing brand new experiences that might be, a bit scary, for lack of a better way of putting it. So I'm wondering what the Mets do as an organization that helps these young men make the transition as seamless as possible to have success both between the lines and also off the baseball field.
Yeah, it definitely is a scary task for these kids who have lived, like you said, 16, 17 years of their lives in countries like the Dominican Republic and Venezuela. And once they, come to the United States, it's definitely a culture shock for them. I think our work we do at the Dominican Academy in player development is integral to the player success at the next level. And I think the education department, headed by Neski Soleriano, she does an amazing job helping these kids with their education, acclimating them to customs and ways of life in the United States that are foreign to these kids. So the work that we do at the Academy is second to none, honestly, in the Dominican Republic. And I'm super proud of what we're able to teach these kids and try to make it so they have as smooth of a transition as possible once they come stateside.
So I think a player the Mets fans are probably the most familiar with that was acquired through IFA is Francisco Álvarez. And Francisco Álvarez is a guy that you said you actually met, or working with at the Dominican Academy. So why don't you tell us a little bit about his process and how you've seen that translate from there to now? Yeah,
Alvy's the best. I had the privilege to work with him a bit in 2020, 2021, with my first couple of years with the Mets when I worked in player development and the analytics department. what became immediately apparent to me with Alvy is just the makeup is second to none. I mean, there is such a desire to be great, and he will not be outworked by anybody. I remember one instance specifically helping him with some tee work, just loading the tee for him and just seeing the effort in every one of his swings. It really calibrated my mind to be like, oh, wow, this is what a big leaguer looks like. And it has helped me immensely in my scouting process, honestly, just seeing what I'm always comparing kids, the makeup wise, to Alvy. I'm like, okay, is this kid gonna work as hard as Alvy did? Is he taking this as seriously as Alvy does? To me, that's an 80. That's a standard in terms of working hard. And he's the best. And I think he's the product of an international scouting process that, utilized all the aspects of the organization that I mentioned before in terms of analytics and the mental skills department and the performance department. And we could kind of see how the international scouting process could kind of spit out a player like that, move through player development, and then impact the major leagues.
So I just need to know, Are you
going to ask the same question? I was just thinking.
I think so. What was your response the first time you saw the tattoo?
Yep. You called him the best twice.
He said the best, and I was like...
Multiple times. I was like, okay, it checks out. That's why he got it.
Yeah.
Did you give him the idea?
I did not give him the idea.
Did you know him before and after the tattoo?
I knew him before and after the tattoo.
When was the tattoo? Do you know when that was?
Oh, my God. It was within the last 2-3 years, it had to be. Yeah. I think it's applicable. I think it's appropriate. I think... I mean, Alvy is the best in terms of expressing himself. He's always smiling. He's always laughing. He's the best.
It's up there with me it's the Javi Baez MLB logo tattoo on the back of the neck and the Francisco Álvarez the best tattoo on the front. Those are the two best tattoos in baseball.
Pretty solid collection, and it's really cool that you had that early interaction with him and you really allow him to, as you said, set the standard for what players should look like when it comes to effort. And then, of course, raw abilities. Another guy with a lot of ability who's found his name on some top prospect lists after a really big 2024 is Jesús Báez, who plays all over the field, had a really good year in the Florida State League in 2024. What can you tell us about Jesús Báez?
Yeah, Jesús was a player that we loved early in our scouting process. Super athlete. We thought could play multiple positions at the time of our scouting process, and I think that has has proven true as he's progressed through our system. Speaking of player development, we as an organization have confidence that he can play all three infield positions. Honestly, I think if given the chance, he could play center field. I mean, I've seen him in our amateur process take balls out there, and he looked great. I know he is recovering from knee surgery right now, and he has every hope to be ready for opening day, and I'm excited to see him next year.
A lot of these guys come from Latin America, but the globalization of the sport is something we hear a lot about in many ways when it comes to business, but also talent. It's not just the United States, it's not just Mexico, the DR, but now you see in the World Baseball Classic, Team Czech Republic, Team Italy, Team Israel, Team Canada, which, I mean, it is technically an international, area of the world.
Team Great Britain.
Team Great Britain, that's right. So, from your perspective, when it comes to the ever-growing nature of Major League Baseball, how has that changed your job, where you have to turn over different rocks now that maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago weren't being turned over to try to find the best talent and really put this organization ahead of the rest of the game?
Yeah, I think it's a good thing. I think the game is growing. I think it's becoming more popular in markets that it wasn't, it hasn't historically been super popular. I think more athletes are starting to play baseball globally, and that's a good thing. We get to go to different places to find and acquire more talent. We've gone to Europe the past 2 years, to London, to the MLB European Development Tournament, where we've scouted players from all over Europe, Germany, the Netherlands, Italy, Spain, etc. The best talent goes there to that tournament, and we've scouted them there. We've made inroads into the amateur markets in Asia and the Pacific Rim in general, Australia, Taiwan, Japan, Korea. So it's super exciting. Baseball is a global sport, and the Mets are trying to find it in every corner of the world.
So I said before, John and I are like, we follow DSL the DSL league pretty hard. And in 2023, we started the first iteration of this podcast, Future of Flushing, and there's a correlation with how the Mets were doing that year and why we were taking a really big interest in minor league baseball that year specifically. And one thing we were following was, I would say, two guys following the home run chase in the Dominican Republic more than probably anybody else on the planet, maybe. But Jeffrey Rosa just trying to break the DSL home run record.
It was basically like the summer of '98.
Yeah. For us, literally, it was every day checking the box score, seeing if Jeffrey Rosa hit another home run and was closer, because it was one of the most fun things to talk about the podcast on our nightly podcast we did every night. But tell us about Jeffrey Rosa, and like, do you think this power is something that can translate to the major league level?
Yeah, I mean, Rosa's had thunder in his hands, you know, since the beginning of the scouting him in our process. He is a big boy who I thought he would hit home runs in the DSL. I didn't think he'd hit that many home runs in the DSL. I know there has been some efforts by player development to improve the body a bit, work on his speed to just make him more athletic and more agile in the outfield. I think that's only going to help him as he tries to advance through our system. But there's no doubt that the power is the carrying tool, and yes, I do think that that's going to carry with him as he advances through the system.
And I mean, in the DSL, like that number, I think was 15 or 16. It wasn't such a crazy high number. So from an outsider perspective, who, like Vito mentioned, you're not watching these games on TV every night necessarily. It makes you wonder, what's the challenge like for a hitter in the DSL? Now, obviously, these are teenagers; these aren't grown men necessarily. But what is the game like in the DSL for those who haven't actually seen a DSL baseball game?
Yeah, 15, 16 home runs might not sound like a lot, but for 16, 17-year-old kids playing on baseball fields that are the same dimensions as old City Field, it's a lot.
Old City Field.
Yeah.
Great Wall of Flushing City Field.
Yes. Those are the dimensions of our field at the complex where we play our DSL games.
And the humidity, it has to have a major factor on the ball flying, right?
For sure. And the wind blows in often at times. It's not a hitter-friendly park whatsoever, especially for teenagers.
It's the Brooklyn Cyclones of the island.
Correct. They're long games. Pitchers struggle to throw strikes. And there's a ton of passed balls. There's a ton of hit by pitches, and it's a slug for the guys to get through the season. So what Jeffrey was able to do in hitting all those home runs was extremely impressive at that level.
In general, how proud are you and the people on your staff that you work with on a day in and day out basis for the kind of talent that you guys have imported into this New York Mets organization with these past few IFA classes?
I'm extremely proud of it. I think that these players have echoed the philosophy of our scouting process of trying to find guys who, they're big league bodies who control the strike zone on both sides of the ball, whether that be hitting or pitching. Guys with tremendous makeup, with the desire to be great. Guys who want to work and outwork the guy next to them. Tremendously proud of our scouts who have, bought into this mindset and have scoured every corner of the Dominican Republic, Venezuela, and the other Latin countries that we cover to try to find these players.
So talking about this year's class, talking about guys from a few years ago, but I don't think we've talked about Giovanni Rodriguez yet. And just to check in on how a guy's doing his first full year in the Mets organization.
Yeah, Giovanni's doing well. He is back in the Dominican Republic now after spending some time in Venezuela in the offseason. He is strong as an ox right now. All of his strength metrics are up, and according to our performance department, and we're looking for a big year out of him on both sides of the ball.
We talked a lot about position players. We talked infielders, one outfielder, but in this year's IFA for the Mets, were there any standout pitching prospects?
Yeah, for sure. There's a few pitchers that I would like to highlight. Giovanni Sanchez is a Dominican right-handed pitcher that we started scouting pretty late in the process, but we're super happy we were able to bring him to the org. He has 3 pitches now. His fastball up to 92, sweeper, slider, and changeup as well. The thing about Giovanni that really stood out is his ability to throw strikes and command his pitches. Really dominates the strike zone. And we're excited to see what he can do in the DSL this summer. 2 other guys I'd like to highlight as well. Dominican lefty Pablo Medina. This is a mountain of a man. He's 6'6". It's a lefty from a weird slot, kind of low 3/4. and it's super deceptive. I think he's going to give hitters a real uncomfortable look. He's up to 90 right now, and I'm excited to see how he progresses as he adds some more velo. And then the last guy I'd like to highlight is Olmedo Barria. He's a righty from Panama. Our scout there, Elvis Rios, did a phenomenal job finding this guy, and it's probably the only time I've seen this in Latin America. But it's basically full sidearm. It's super fun. It's funk. It's deception. He's got a big sweeper. He's got a turbo changeup. He's a big human as well. He's 6'4". I'm excited to see what he's going to do this summer for us.
So I definitely want to acknowledge that you're saying that even on the international side of things, that the Mets are going after a specific kind of pitcher, and that's big, strong dudes. And that's something that John and I have actually talked about organization-wide, where you see these big, tall, lumbering pitchers, like you have your Christian Scotts, you have your Blade Tidwells, you have your Mike Vassals, you have a guy that was recently traded to a different team, but Tyler Stewart. Like, there's a very specific player profile that the Mets have. And like John said, straight up the middle on the position side, it looks like this organizational philosophy is spread across all the way to the international side of things.
For sure. I think the organization is pretty solidly aligned in terms of the players that we're trying to acquire and then ultimately develop. Like you said, big bodies is one of the core one of the core boxes that we're trying to check when it comes to pitchers. We want these guys to look good coming off the bus. And ultimately, big bodies is something that I think is evident. It's evident that it's valued top to bottom of the organization. I mean, you see the big leagues, Sean Manaea, Frankie Montas. I mean, these are big humans, and we're trying to echo that philosophy all the way from the DSL.
I didn't realize how of an absolute unit Frankie Montas was until we met him face to face at Amazing Day. Mm-hmm. And you see a guy on TV, and then you meet them in person, and especially athletes, because when you see athletes on TV, they all kind of look the same size. You meet Frankie Montas in person, and you're like absolute unit. I was blown away.
Yeah. These major leaguers are big humans, man, and I think one thing that we do, we like to get our international scouts up to spring training just so they can kind of be around the big leaguers and see what a big leaguer actually looks like. And I think it helps them in their scouting process. So, we're looking for big leaguers in the Dominican, in Venezuela, in these countries, and they want to be able to know, what a big leaguer looks like.
Well, Rosario, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us, break down the 2025 IFA class, as well as give us some insight where these guys are right now. If you enjoyed this podcast, subscribe to Meet at the Apple on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We're on the Mets YouTube. I'm on Twitter at Vito F. Khaleesi. John is at JMB9191. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next time at the Apple.